So hi everyone, welcome to the Association of Supply Chains Management's episode 5 webinar on the role of technology and supply chain in the circular economy. We're really lucky and fortunate today to have some really great guests today joining us. First of all, we have James Sullivan, or Jim Sullivan. He's the head of Global Sustainability Innovator Accelerator at SAP. And then we have Gary Cooper. He is the co-founder and CEO of Reaply, a circular economy technology. Both of these gentlemen are leaders in the respective technology space on the circular economy and technology, and I'm really happy that both of you are taking the time out of your schedules today to join. How are you both doing?
Great. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. Well, really good.
Well, excited to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, no, happy you guys can make it. A couple of rules today, rules of the show. Want to get a couple learning outcomes for everybody joining us. I think one of the key things we're going to dive in today is really what is the specific role of technology in the circular economy? What are some of the value it's driving, and some of the the hidden behind the scenes look of how much technology is enabling the transition to a circular economy. We're going to see how technology is affecting supply chain within the circular context, and really also talk about the current state. We're going to talk about the current state of technology, COVID, and the circular economy as well, and then handle some other big lying issues. So on that note, let's just jump into the conversation here. So Gary, I'm going to start with you a little bit. Reaply is a fantastic company, and I'm not going to do any more justice describing what it is. But if you could take a quick second just to talk about Reaply and its role in the circular economy and the role that technology is playing specifically, it'd be really great to get your thoughts to set us off.
Sure. Thanks, John, for having me on this webinar. Glad to join with Jim. So Reaply was conceived to help organizations reapply surplus or idle assets that they might have internally, so that they don't buy things that they don't need, as well as they don't throw things away that they shouldn't. And then we kind of take it a little bit further, because the end of the life of an asset or a resource or material internally to an organization isn't its last value stop. So we connect all of our organizations so that they can kind of share things that they no longer need internally with other organizations, schools, startups, their peers, who might make better use of that material, resource, or asset. And so essentially Reaply is my organization building the technology infrastructure to allow the free flow of materials, resources, and assets.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing. And Jim, I want to pivot to you quickly. You know, you're a really key partner of Pyxera Global in the work that we're doing here. And you're doing some really cool forward-thinking stuff in the role of circular economy. Can you just lend some insight a little bit about your role specifically on what you're doing, and then also specifically SAP's role in transitioning to a circular economy?
Sure, happy to, John. So yeah, really proud to be here on the webinar today representing SAP. Our purpose is to help the world run better and improve people's lives. And a big part of my role is how to make that real for our customers, moving the world into a bit better place. But it's not really, all about green. It's about finding business responsible ways to move forward that help pull together financial value, societal value, and help our planet. So really, as we look at kind of our strategy, it's we're on our 10th year of having a board level sustainability approach at SAP. We've led the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for all of those years for the IT sector. And what we really are looking to do is a two-part strategy, is both be an exemplar of sustainability as well as an enabler of what our customers can do. Because for our impact, it's mostly how we help our customers make the world a better place. So on the exemplar side, we're one of the first companies out the door with a 1.5 degree science target for greenhouse gases and for climate. We have a number of diversity metrics at the board and the management level, women in senior management, all of those pieces. We also have recently put into place a zero single-use plastics policy. So that will be in effect globally by the end of 2020. So we really try to walk the walk at what we're doing. And on the customer side, we've been doing things for a number of years within EHS product safety, and we have a number of large new programs around climate change, one of the largest challenges facing the world today, and circular economy. So I'll give you a little more details on circular as we get into the conversation.
One thing that's really unique here, Jim, is that we have both you representing a large multinational and then Gary himself representing a startup. So I think it's really interesting to see technology and two different sides of it coming together and playing the role in the circular transition. Gary, I want to pivot to you a little bit. When we talk about the circular economy, we know that it's a rather broad definition, really finite definition, which ones we're really trying to help people understand on their own, but a lot of the conversations around waste. Mm-hmm. What do you see as some of the key barriers that technology unlocks with your work at Reaply around waste and how it enables the transition to circularity?
Yeah, I think there's a couple buckets of how technology helps us get to circularity or more global circularity. The first that we focus on is visibility. In fact, our vision at Reaply is to make all the world's resources more visible and easily transferable. Kind of what Google did with information. So I think one thing to know is where are all the materials? Where are all the resources? What condition are they in? Who has them? How can I get them? So that for sure, we think is a central role of technologies, and not just the technologies that we're building, technologies that SAP has for sure built and others that we would have to partner with to kind of really bring global visibility to all assets. I think the other role in technology is to bring more people into the economy, to bring more people into what we call circular economy. And the way that we've been trying to operationalize that at Reaply is to make using our technology stupid simple. There's a lot of complex things happening on the back end, but for the user, you can't have a barrier of, I don't know how to use this. It's foreign. I need a consultant to tell me how to use something.
Right.
So those are two key things is making sure the technology actually helps us understand what we have in this world or in our organizations or in our communities so that we can actually make better consumption decisions. But then the other is to make sure there's no barrier to understanding how to use that technology by really doing the hard work and making technology simple.
Great. Thank you for that. Well, Jim, I want to transition to you a little bit because I've been around some of the great work that you're doing around your plastic cloud, your unique way of tracking waste. I think it'd be really insightful to get your piece on technology and what you're enabling, especially the global view that SAP has in this transition to circularity, and get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and Gary made a good point on the waste side. But it's not just about waste as circularity; it's about resource and resource management throughout the life cycle, and ideally multiple life cycles. So, if we start with kind of the scope of the problem, at a high level, we're using up about 1.75 planets worth of resources on an annual basis. And unfortunately, we don't have a second planet in our back pocket, so we need to begin to look at that challenge. There's about
that's an issue.
Maybe Mars, but let's hold that for now.
Space Force. Sorry. Yes.
100 billion tons of resources are coming into the economy every year, and we're using those, to meet a lot of human needs. So, on one hand, it's the resource production. On the other hand, it's the use side, which I think Gary well represented. I mean, we're making 14 garments for every person on Earth per year. And the US now, I think we're up to close to 13 connected devices per person. So, again, in a macro sense, population has been growing pretty significantly. It's doubled in my lifetime. And for many years, resource use had gone, the opposite way of population. But for the past decades, it's actually doubling compared to population growth. So a lot of people are using a lot more stuff, which leads to part of the problem. And then the end of life, the waste topic is one I think is the most well-known, but it's not only the plastic floating in the ocean. it's causing $13 billion of marine ecosystem damages on an annual basis. And, the health effects we're not even sure of at the moment. But I think everybody's seen the studies. We're ingesting about a plastic credit card worth of microplastics on a weekly basis. So there's a lot of pieces that need to fit together on that. So to Gary's point, no one of us is going to solve this challenge individually, even a company as large and ubiquitous as SAP. We need startups, we need ecosystems, we need NGOs, we need a lot of people moving together with visibility of data, with the traceability, and then sharing our values towards what we view the right direction to be.
Yeah, and I want to lean into that a little bit. I think you bring up a great point. I mean, one, the role of technology providing a true data snapshot of all these, big wicked problems that we're dealing with simultaneously. And I think also the role, what you said of it's not solved on a silo, right? It's not solved just here's the private sector and let's go into our little silo and let's create a new economy. Gary, I want to come to you a little bit now on the role of partnership with other sectors. What are you doing with Reaply? And I think specifically, one thing that we see, and we're working all together on our Circular Chicago Coalition, is really the need to lean in on the private and public sector working together as well in unison on a circular transition. Gary, I'm going to first start with you. What are you doing specifically, if anything, working with the public sector where you're based in Chicago, that you can get some insight of how technology is having a role, not just to sell more products or sell more stuff, but also to make this transition?
Yeah, and I see that the sun is really shining on me.
Hey, listen.
Let me step back a bit.
Little sunshine is good.
But so there's a couple things that we're doing in Chicago. So one thing is that kind of at the end of May, we Reaply worked with the city of Chicago and the Office of the Mayor to launch, I think, the first ever local-to-local marketplace in concert with a municipality like the city of Chicago, where we allowed local suppliers of PPE, mom and pops, brewers who one day were making, beer and then the next day making hand sanitizer, to actually sell that to locally based small businesses and nonprofits as they tried to reopen safely. In fact, there was an ordinance that the city of Chicago passed that required businesses to have hand sanitizer, face masks, and protective barriers for their patrons and their employees, but the city didn't want that to be kind of a reverse regressive tax to those businesses that were just reopening. So we set up this kind of digital local kind of private marketplace, and it went so well that one of the things that we are going to do in the fall with the city of Chicago is relaunch just a local-to-local marketplace. So think about it like as a digital farmers market almost kind of concept, and so just go beyond PPE, and we're going to start with the suppliers only being Black and brown businesses in the city of Chicago. As it turns out, something like 90% of Black and brown small businesses in the city of Chicago have no online presence. They don't have an eBay store. They're not on Amazon. They're not even on Craigslist, or not even on Google to kind of find their address. So I think one of the imperatives is to kind of get those businesses with some digital footprint and to do it really easily. And so that's one of the really cool things that I think we're really excited about. And I think it's a concept of circulation, right? Which is, can we make local sourcing, small loops, the first stop of how people are sourcing? Because then that makes rigidity, resilience, and redundancies in a locale, but it also reduces all the possible greenhouse gas effects if I get something from California shipped to Chicago. So it fits with our values. It obviously fits with our technology and what we've done before, and we're kind of excited to actually be replicating this exact success in New York City and in the state of New Jersey, hopefully very soon. So more on the come, but we've been doing a lot of work here in Chicago, and we've been doing that work not just with the city, but we've also been doing it with corporate partners, some of which some people might think are competitive. And so I think one of the things that I always try to think about, and Jim kind of alluded to this in his last comments, is how can we share values with organizations so that we can have a better solution to getting to an end that every business, hopefully in every city, needs to get to, which is trying to figure out how to connect end of life to beginning of next use.
Yeah, and
That's,
John,
yeah, go ahead.
was just going to build on that a bit. I think that, the collaboration and, not only with, partners, potential competitors, with governments, with all of the above is really necessary to move the ball forward here. One project I wanted to highlight, John, I think, you're pretty familiar with it. We worked with Google Cloud last year to run a circular economy challenge. We had social enterprises from more than 50 countries put in applications around that challenge. We ended up at Google Next working with about 5 of them incredibly deeply, doing some really good work. Jasmine Crowe at Gooder, and the company that ended up winning that challenge, I think we're all winners from it, but was Michael Groves and Topolytics in Scotland. And we've now leveraged that relationship and challenge to do real-time waste mapping in the UK with DEFRA. We're working on a project in Scotland now to be able to do that, and hopefully soon with Gary and with you, looking at that in the U.S. and within Chicago. So really exciting, but it's those kinds of things where you can bring together large companies, multiple companies in the same sector, innovative, social enterprises, and really see that's where the magic happens.
Absolutely.
Well, it's really interesting what you both are saying, though. I mean, if you really just go behind the surfaces of this transition to a circular economy, first of all, it's not on a silo. It's much more complex. But technology kind of plays the role as almost the front line to a degree of knocking down those barriers. Without the technology, you're not going to understand the footprint. You're not going to understand the numbers. You're not going to be able to scale, let's say, a transition where you can replicate. On that note, let's talk a little bit about the barriers. Let's talk about this barrier to circular economy and the role of technology can play in helping it move forward. When we look at supply chain, for example, supply chain in a circular economy, you're going from linear to circular, right? Yeah. How is technology, or how can technology help enable the transition from a linear to a circular model and work with some of these companies who have so much infrastructure invested in supply chain to unwind that a little bit and make this transition easier or smoother? Jim, let's start with you on SAP, if you have any insights.
I'm going to start with something interesting, John, is just language. Even the term supply chain implies a linear process, and I very, very much so appreciate the association of supply chain management with this webinar, but I'm not calling them out. I mean, if you look at our website, all of our
it's just the nomenclature. You got to talk to Michael
it's
Porter.
The nomenclature, yeah, and
exactly.
We support end-to-end business processes. Even the term waste, it's
absolutely.
So we really need a rethinking of how these models work, how language fits together on that. But I'm going to go back to Gary's answer for the first one. I mean, the first and biggest role of technology is just visibility. Where are materials coming from? Where are materials flowing? What are the implications of that? And really, how do you keep them in use at the highest possible value for the longest possible time? And I spent a lot of years at EPA, but I'm not sure I have the right value judgment on climate versus plastic floating in the ocean versus the health effects and a lot of other things. These are super complicated topics, and what technology can do is make visible what these trade-offs, these decisions are, right, and allow our customers, allow people as they're making everyday decisions, the right visibility to buy to or to live their own values. So I think that's the biggest place where technology plays a role, is just making all these trade-offs visible.
Yeah, and just to add to what Jim was saying, obviously I love the visibility. That's one of the things that we're heads down on at Reaply. But I think the other place that you kind of like next gen for us is really the role of machine learning and AI in trying to help supply chain In fact, Jim, to your point about supply chain, on this board over here, I have a concept around supply circles, but to help manufacturing leaders really understand their purchasing behavior prior, their current supply, the current available supply in the world, and then for a system to help suggest purchasing behavior in the future. that would be more sustainable, that would be cost effective, but also allow them to get through whatever things that they're building for their customer base. So I think for sure there's a huge, big, hairy problem with trying to figure out where are things, what condition are, how do I get them, who's the authority, all those types of things. But then the next level is, can we make predictions to help these decision makers not make errors or not go back to linear behavior, because it's kind of hard to understand how to navigate the circular infrastructure that's being built, which is why I think it's really important to think about users. When we're building all these the circular technologies, we have to think about who's using it, how would they use it, because what we don't want is people to go back to the linear behaviors, right? And so I think it's both visibility. I love to see more data, and some of the companies we've already mentioned are really in that space, and I'm looking forward to potentially working with them. But then also, how can we make sure that things are so easy to use that it starts to micro change that behavior of that user to do something that's more beneficial to the planet and their company, as opposed to just something that's easier and familiar.
No, I love that. And I love the analogy of value circles, I think, and supply circles. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. And thanks for the putting your professor hat on for a second. I want to transition to one last question here and to wrap up, because I think it's an important one. Both of you mentioned the role of environment, of how it feeds into circular economy. Again, nothing on a silo from a sector point of view, nothing from a silo from how everything is connected. And we have a couple of things happening right now where people wake up and kind of a hangover every day. We have COVID happening. We have Black Lives Matters. We have resiliency. Mm-hmm. What is the current snapshot that you can provide, an example of how you're dealing with this as a tech company on all these three social issues together? What is front and mind center today? And maybe you can give some words of wisdom as we wrap up this session with you folks. And Jim, I could start with you if that's all right.
Sure, happy to, John. I'm not sure anybody has the answer to that question that you're posing.
I'm not asking for the answer. I just want something, a nugget out of that, something, a thread to pull out of it.
Longer term is we look at kind of where we need to go in this space. One of the things we've worked on with a lot of a number of our customers, a number of folks in the accounting space is really how do you balance the profitability, finance, environment, and society. So we've helped launch a group called the Value Balancing Alliance that's really looking at changing the P&L to account for these types of social and environmental pieces. So longer term for companies, it goes back to you can't manage what you don't measure. So it needs to be on the balance sheet. It needs to be understood in a way where you're managing the company to that, both from an R&D perspective, from a design perspective, from a board compensation perspective. Yes. So that's kind of the big, picture answer to that. On the smaller picture, it goes back to the beginning of the conversation where think globally, act locally. Every decision we all make as an individual every day, every decision we make as a company every day, whether big or small, can help shape those values and move those values in a better direction. But we need to have all the information. Again, I'll go back to Gary's point of, locally sourcing versus sourcing globally. It's a global economy, but there are trade-offs to each of those decisions. So how do you make that visible in a social perspective? As well as an environmental perspective. And it just takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of projects, to get that. But I'm going to come back to design. We're talking about materials. It really needs to start with design. And as we give designers information, they need to understand that there are secondary materials that are available. There's sources for these types of things. So, I don't want to spend too much time. There's probably hundreds of projects I could talk about, starting in Ghana with waste pickers and beginning to pull those materials back into circulation and visibility for corporate buying, all of these kinds of things. But it all needs to work reasonably well together. And it needs to, is part of that vision. There need to be a lot of projects going on to really show how the data flows through multiple cycles of that. So once we prove it out in the market a number of times, it can become a bit more commonplace, but it does require a community. It requires a common approach, and it requires shared values to get there.
And before transitioning to Gary, I mean, I think, this is a nice one on working with Waste Pickers, who's a marginalized community globally. I know, and I love the fact that you highlighted that example of what you're trying to do in Ghana. And I think that speaks well to the inclusive nature of what we want a circular economy to be. And on that note, Gary, the same question to you, who lives and breathes inclusion and the work that you're doing with your circular mission. What do you have to say?
Yeah, so there's, first of all, I love all the things that SAP and Jim was just describing. I was just sitting there like, oh, wow, that's awesome. I learned
That's why we're all partners on Chicago together.
We're a startup. So, there are certain things that we would love to do that we can't. But two things that I've been focused on definitely since George Floyd's murder, before, I would even say kind of since the beginning of the COVID outbreak. So the first is to be very vocal about the world I see and be unabashed about talking about it and writing about it and being on panels about it. I think for too long, a lot of well-meaning, well-thoughtful executives, stakeholders, and leaders have been muted or been tight-lipped about the things that they should be be vocal about. And I get that. I have investors, I have clients, we have stakeholders all over the place. And what I've just tried to think about is in the step 2 is what are our values? At Reaply, we have 7 core values that permeate every decision, every major decision we always make. One of them that I always keep in mind is we are stewards of our community. And so the way that we've been trying to operationalize that at Reaply is a couple of small things and some big things. So one small thing is that we've tried to amplify other small companies that are doing some great work, whether they're competitors of ours, whether they have really nothing to do with circular economy or sustainability. On all of our social channels, we've written blogs about companies in fashion. We've written blogs about companies doing some really cool things in e-commerce, things that have nothing to do really about us, but just trying to use whatever voice that we have in the market to kind of amplify things that other companies are doing of our size. And the second thing we've tried to do that's a little bigger is we've tried to meet our customers. In fact, our first core value is we listen to and delight our users and customers. So what we try to do is try to understand where are our customers. The market just retracted 30%. So that just means that they're all hurting from a financial perspective, no matter what business they're in. So how can we continue to do work with them as a small company, but recognize where they are financially? And so we've tried to be very creative in our partnership agreements and how we go to market to meet them. So those are some flavors of the things that we've done. We've actually offered, just as another note, we've offered a sustainability scholarship. So I think we have $3,000 or $4,000, $1,000 scholarships that we're offering for undergraduate students who just have really cool ideas about how to make the university more sustainable. So we tried to think through, like, what could we do as a 25, 30-person company to really help our community, to help our world. But I've been personally as vocal as I could try to be, and I think I write an essay every other week about D&I issues, and I'm not even a race scholar, but just kind of the world I see and the world I want to be better for the next Gary, hopefully who will be competitive with me. And so those are some of the things, John, that I and Reaply have been trying to do to better our environment and community.
Well, Jim and Gary, thank you so much for being such wonderful stewards of this transition to circular economy and providing your thoughts and insights today on this webinar. I really appreciate your time and look forward to continuing down this little partnership road on Circular Chicago and hopefully doing a webinar on providing a roadmap that everyone can follow here in the U.S. Great. So stay tuned. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you all.